Welcome to the fourth and final installment of the 2012 Pizza and Politics Presidential Debate Watches. We started out with a really surprising first debate for not only the people on the left, but also the people on the right. And we've been on a roller coaster as we watched the vice presidential debate and then last week's town hall debate. And we end tonight on a subject that's really important, even though the American people may not put it at the top of their list. And that is, how will the next man who is president handle foreign policy in an age of increasing complexity in our relations around the world? So thank you for being here tonight. I'm Linda Peek Schacht, Executive Director of the Andrews Institute for Civic Leadership. And with us for all of our debate watches has been Sue Andrews, for whom our institute is named. Sue, thank you so much. Please help me in joining. And thank you, Sue. Tonight we have a new panel for you and some people who are returning. I'll introduce them after Dr. Mack takes your temperature on what you think about foreign policy.
Before we get going with the polling, once again, we are going to have a hashtag going. Our hashtag for tonight is hashtag LU Pizza and Politics. If we can show the laptop on the screen, we already have a few tweets already, so we encourage you to, throughout the evening, keep tweeting. We do have, once more, a gift card for Starbucks. Free beverage at Starbucks for the best tweet tonight. So keep up the good work, and we'll share that at the close. On the table in front of many of you, you will find some clickers, some response devices. If you will get those at this time. If there happen to be any at your table that are not being used, go ahead and hold them up so that anybody else who would like can use them. We've got about 90, just a little bit over 90 clickers tonight, so we'll look forward to seeing where you stand now and then after the debate. If you look carefully on your clicker, you'll see buttons of A, B, C, etc. We'll let you use those buttons to indicate your. We'll start off with some fairly easy demographic questions. So let's open the poll. And if you will, tell us about yourself. Females, press A. Male, press B. If you mess up, you can change your vote until the poll is closed. We have 86 so far of you who have responded. We'll close this poll in about 5 seconds. All right, very evenly split. Let's talk about age. How old are you? It's always interesting to see how many first-time voters we're going to have in this crowd. So you can see the A, B, C, D, or E. We'll close this poll in about 5 seconds. All right, more than 3/4 of this group with clickers are voting for the president for the first time. If you will, please identify your party affiliation. Close the poll in about 5 seconds. All right, 40% of those of you with clickers, Republican. We've changed this one up just a little bit from the last few Pizza and Politics. We want to see how many are truly still undecided or are voting for there are a few candidates other than Obama and Romney. So if the election were held now, please describe for us how you would vote. Close this poll in about 5 seconds. All right, it's Mitt Romney at 47. He had been about 60% in our first 3 polls that included leaning toward and definitely toward Romney. We do see that 10% of you, as of this moment, are undecided. 8% of you voting for one of those other candidates. Let's talk about foreign policy. In making your decision about whom to vote for this fall, how important is this issue to you in your vote? How important is foreign policy in crafting your vote this fall? We'll close this poll in about 5 seconds. All right, 46% of you say very important. Another third, somewhat important. Regardless of whom you support, answer this. Which candidate do you think would do the better job of making wise decisions about foreign policy? Which candidate do you think would do the better job of making wise decisions about foreign policy? These questions are straight from the Pew Center group. And we'll close this question in about 5 minutes. 5 seconds. We're moving along a little quicker than that. Here we go. All right, pretty similar. 52% Mitt Romney. Let's focus on President Obama. Do you think that he is too tough or not tough enough or about right in his approach to foreign policy and national security issues? Focus on President Obama. We're about to close this poll. All right. 62% think the president is not tough enough. About a third of you think that he's about right. Let's focus on Mitt Romney. Do you think Mitt Romney would be too tough or not tough enough or about right in his approach to foreign policy? And about to close this poll. 48% about right, pretty evenly distributed, not too tough, not tough enough. One of the questions that has dominated foreign policy these last 2 or 3 debates has been about the event that happened last month. To what extent have you followed news about last month's attacks on American embassies and consulates in the Middle East and the killing of the U.S. ambassador in Libya? If you followed that very closely, press A. Fairly closely, press B. Not closely, press C. All right. About a fourth of you have followed it very closely. So we'll see how much they address that tonight. All right. Who do you expect to win tonight's debate? Who do you expect to win? Close this poll in about 5 seconds. All right, very evenly distributed. 51% think the governor will win. We'll come back and revisit to see how you think they did after the debate, so stay tuned, keep tweeting, and we'll turn things over to Linda.
Thanks, Dr. Mack. Back by popular demand on our panel tonight is Greg Ramos, who was the Nashville Sings Man of the Year for the role he played in Nashville for All of Us and the English Only Initiative defeat. He's also a member of the Andrews Institute Leadership Council, and Greg, we're so happy to welcome you back tonight. Also coming back to us, now this is your third debate, I think, with us, Toby, is Toby Compton, a proud Lipscomb graduate and now member of Governor Haslam's administration and a professor here in Lipscomb's Department of Communication and Journalism. Also from our Department of Communication and Journalism, who is one of the sponsors of tonight's event, is Alan Griggs, our moderator for this evening, who is Executive of Residence and Visiting Professor here with us. And for many of you, the person I have to say who's made sure that our Journalism and Communication Department now rivals any in the city. In terms of offering a newscast and Illumination, our online news service for students. So thank you, Alan, for that. I heard some applause for Illumination. Taking the student seats tonight are Scott Bledsoe, a history and political science who has his own fan club here tonight. Scott is a history and political science major and is also an intern in the Andrews Institute for Civic Leadership this year. And next to him is Katie Culp, a recent Harding graduate, recently of Fox News here in Nashville, and now a master's in civic leadership student with us here at Lipscomb. So the one thing that I should warn you about is that Katie talked her way into and kept for several months an internship with Mike Huckabee for his show on Fox. And so we expect to hear a little bit of the Huckabee message from you tonight, Katie. So thank you so much, panelists, for joining us one more time. Alan, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Here we are at the last debate, ladies and gentlemen. It seems like it's gone by rather fast. We've made it through Malarkey. We've made it through Rhodesia, at least I think we have, although I'm not sure. And we may be hearing some detailed information we need tonight about foreign policy, but we'll find out here from our esteemed panel. Toby, let's turn to you first. What do you expect to hear from the governor tonight?
Well, I think he's going to continue making his case. He's going to continue connecting. Tonight, the thing that had to happen for Romney, he had quickly turned attention away from foreign policy and turn it back home. And he's going to win on the issue he can win on, which is jobs and the economy. He will do very well, I think, with answers about the debt crisis in Europe. We'll probably talk pretty extensively about intellectual properties and banking, the finance manipulation in China. But when we get into the conversation about war and some of the other things, he's got to watch out where he goes pretty quickly because from a polling standpoint, talk of war, talk of military intervention, turns women off, and that's where he's hurting the worst right now is in across the nation is polls and conservatism.
All right.
Binders full of women.
Binders full of women, yes. Everybody remembers that comment. I haven't been able to live that one down yet, I think. But that's an interesting observation, so he's going to have to walk very carefully through this, right?
I think so.
Okay. Greg, what do you see from the president tonight?
I think, first of all, can I say this? I'm really impressed to see all of you here. I mean, we've got football game on tonight. We've got the 7th game of the National
Don't remind me.
Championship. It's great that you all are here. I think it speaks well of all of you. I think the president is going to be talking about his foreign policy successes. At the Al Smith dinner the other day, one of the funniest lines I thought he said was, spoiler alert, Osama bin Laden is dead. And he's going to be talking about that and accentuating that point today. I think he's going to be talking about as well all the touchy, sensitive subjects that we have, and I think he's going to, this is what I hope anyway, a lot of these things we don't have great clarification in what are the differences between the president and Governor Romney. Governor Romney has been pretty quick to criticize the president, but you know what we don't have a lot of information about is how is it that he would perceive differently the governor I'm talking about. And so Iran is a classic situation. What's the alternative? Are we talking about war? And if so, that's a dangerous alternative, especially after we've been at war in 2 separate wars for all many years. So I think this is going to be a debate where the governor is going to have to tread carefully.
From a young person's standpoint, what do you two want to hear tonight out of these candidates? Kate, speak up.
Well, I think that Romney will probably bring up Libya a lot because we don't have a lot of answers. And I want to hear those answers, how it happened, why it happened, what we missed going forward. And I think ultimately this debate is obviously about leadership tonight. And Romney's going to tell us how he's going to lead, and we're going to listen to him, and we're going to take him at his word. Obama has shown us over the last 4 years regarding foreign policy how he's led. So we basically have to go on his track record when looking forward. And I want to hear about our renewed commitment to Israel. I think the current administration has sort of turned their back on Israel, and they're such an important ally for us. And piggybacking on him, I want to hear about Iran and their nuclear program.
A lot of things on the table tonight. Scott?
As a young person and as someone who really, I don't know who I'm going to vote for in 2 weeks, I'm especially looking to see which one of the candidates really asserts himself as a leader, kind of like Katie was saying. I'm looking for someone, one of these candidates, to show me that they are capable of leading this country. And I expect Obama to hammer the 3 points home. Osama bin Laden's dead, he pulled us out of Iraq, and we're winding down Afghanistan. Those are the 3 points that he's going to hammer home tonight. Those are the 3 points he has to hammer home. And I'm looking for Romney to attack Obama on the Libya crisis. And I'm looking for Obama to state his case that he is a comparable and a better leader than Obama, and that he would handle that situation better. And I am especially hoping that the candidates don't necessarily bicker back and forth. No, that's not right. I want them to kind of just sober it out and kind of just say, get back down to the basics and the facts, and just talk about the issues instead of critiquing the other one back and forth, which is kind of what the last debate was. So that's what I'm looking for.
No, Alan, just the format it might make it more conducive to exactly that, because they're not going to be standing there tonight. They're going to be sitting at a table. Now, we saw during the vice presidential debate that even that is going to cause a lot of fireworks. But I don't expect that tonight. I expect that one of the things that we're going to be looking at tonight is who can be the commander-in-chief, who really is presidential. And I think I talked a lot about the last time I was here that substance was really a lot more important to me. But I think today a lot of people are really going to be looking at that commander-in-chief quality, that presidential quality. Who will be our leader on these issues? So I expect less fireworks tonight right now.
Same thing with you?
No, I completely agree. Completely different style, completely different tactic here. They're going to be seated. They're going to probably be a little less punchy and hit each other's throat. I think they'll choose their words a little differently because these are fairly simple topics. These are really deep. American people really don't. Most people don't get into these things in foreign policy, so they're going to have to turn as quickly as they can and pivot quickly back to issues at home and try to bring those things up.
Well, and that was one of my points that I really wanted to make. How do you reach the American public, the nerve of the American public, talking about foreign policy? Anybody?
War.
The longest war that we've ever been in Afghanistan?
I think since we've been at war for the last 12 years, I think that will be one of the things that people are going to be listening to, and the alternative is so dangerous. We were talking about Iran. We can talk about that with the Syrian situation. We can talk about that with Lebanon. And really, I hope tonight to learn what are you talking about? As I mentioned, Governor Romney has been very critical of the president, but exactly what would you propose that we do differently, especially in Iran? We're talking about the possibility of a nuclear war. The stakes couldn't be higher. And already, we talk about what's the red line. I think the governor has already gone on record as his red line really is the same as the president's at this point, which is not to allow Iran to have nuclear capability. Well, if that's the case, what is it that you would do differently? And that's what I hope to hear tonight.
And we have news coming out lately that it appears America and Iran are going to sit down at the table and do some negotiating, possibly. Does that affect anything here?
Maybe. I think it's still very unclear if that's going to happen or not.
Of all the hot spots in the world, which ones do you want them to address?
I would like him to address the Iranian crisis, but I'd like to see, like Mr. Ramos was saying, what is Romney going to do about it? Because I think that may be the most important foreign policy issue that we have right now. I just think that is crucial, and I want to see how Mr. Romney would lead in that situation, because I don't think he's come out with a plan for that, and I'd like to see what Obama said and take more of the leadership. But
Clay, one of the things that Governor Romney has mentioned in the past is he would declare, I think on day one, he said that China is a currency manipulator. Well, that brings in the possibility of raising tariffs. If that's the case, if we play it out, tariffs could possibly be raised, and probably will be raised on us. And pretty soon, we're in a trade war. So it's a ticklish situation. Well, not ticklish. It's a desperate situation. And so how is it that we approach China? The other thing is that remember that China, a lot of our debt is actually over to China. So, and we depend on each other. We provide markets for one another. So when you start in a tariff war like this, it has ripple effects not only in this country but worldwide. And I, for one, really am interested in hearing both candidates' approaches to what will be and what is really the biggest economy in the entire world.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, the currency manipulation allegations are out there. Here in Nashville, we talked about the panels recently on copyright infringement, intellectual properties that are being ripped off in China that affects Nashvilleians greatly. And by the way, 51,250 people have voted in Davidson County so far as of this afternoon. So for anybody out there that's number one, that's about 16% of eligible voters in Nashville vote. So it's pretty high at this point. That's just talking about that.
So make sure all of you get out and vote.
Yeah, I'll be interested in seeing some of the alternative things. We have a major gang crisis in Mexico. You know, that's just over our border. That's a serious situation. We talked about energy independence. You know, what does that mean out there in terms of import exports of oil? The world is a really interesting and dangerous place right now in many respects.
It's a good description. What about Pakistan? We've got Pakistan here trying to figure out which side they're on, going back and forth. Russia. We have Russia as well. How do you think the Europeans and the rest of the world are viewing this election?
You want to take that, Scott?
I don't know. I think the Europeans will be very interested to see what happens. I know that they are in a debt crisis. Obviously, there's that. And I think it's interesting to see how that plays out because, as in before, whoever's in charge is going to have a lot of decision to make on where we stand with the European crisis and how we deal with that. Because if the euro collapses and if the eurozone collapses, that has far-reaching effects for not only Europe but also for America and for us. So I think it's going to be interesting to see if that comes up tonight and if that comes up, how the candidates respond to that and what their policies are, and what their stances are.
You know, one of the interesting things, Governor Romney talked about Russia as being the #1 geopolitical foe. And that wasn't all that long ago. And he received a lot of criticism for that as well. I'd like to see if that comes up tonight during these debates. We're just so interdependent. I think Toby mentioned it. This is a critical time in the history of the world, but I don't think there's been any time where we've had as much of an interdependence on one another as we have now. This is becoming a smaller world in that respect. We're trading with one another. We interact with one another more, and we just depend on one another for any time in our history. Very, very dangerous time.
Okay, any thoughts from you two about how the rest of the world is viewing this election?
Well, in a very elementary answer, I would say, you know, obviously a lot of weight is in it. And I think that Romney, what he brings to the table is he has a great sense of looking at a big picture and knowing how everyone can benefit from our strengths. And so I think if I was, you know, living in another country, I would definitely be looking at how the economy is going to change if we do change and have Romney in office. I think they know how it's gone thus far with Obama in office.
I think there are people all over the world, both in politics and in business, who are closely watching this race, no doubt. I think that, you know, on both sides of the equation, both in politics and business, people stand to benefit on both sides of the equation. You know, some people want Obama for certain reasons. You know, Putin has said the comment Greg was referencing about what the #1 geopolitical foe at the moment. There's evidently this behind-the-scenes deal cut between Putin and Obama that they're going to come back and negotiate certain Eastern European situations. But at the end of the day, there's been very few instances where a foreign policy debate has really affected the outcome of the election. The only one that I can think of is 1976, when President Ford was asked about Soviet domination in Eastern Europe. He claimed that didn't happen. There was no Soviet domination. The moderator went back and even asked him for clarification. He said no. No.
That was a tipping point.
And that was it. And then suddenly you had a Jimmy Carter president. Though he didn't have any probable chance at that point probably win over Ford, but for that. So that's one of the few occasions where you can actually see a foreign policy issue or debate actually tip.
We haven't talked about Syria tonight, the unrest in Syria too, and how to handle that. That's a pretty big hot potato, don't you think?
I do personally, because one of the things that this underscores the relationship with the Russians. The Russians, many would argue, have actually been assisting us with Afghanistan and Iran in particular. However, on Syria, the Russians and the United States have been at odds because the Russians are arming the Syrians. And so it's really important how we deal with the Russians in the Syrian situation, and then not have it adversely affect us with respect to Iran and Afghanistan. There's a tightrope that the United States is walking.
Any final thoughts here from you two young folks about what you'd like to see? I think it'd be interesting to see if there's any discussion, probably won't be, but any discussion about the use of drones. We know that the president has used them quite liberally, especially over the border in Pakistan. In fact, one of the lines coming out of this election is, and you know where I'm leaning on this, I'm not sure, he's the only Nobel Peace Prize winner to have a hit list. So, and that's true. It's a very dramatic quote, but it is true. Yeah.
The president has actually received a lot of criticism on the left for exactly that. And I was reading either today or within the last few days that the use of the drones under the Obama administration is far greater than it was during the entirety of the George W. Bush administration.
And the revelation today was that there was a drone over the consul in Benghazi during the attack, and they were able to actually watch the attack take place, and yet did nothing.
Okay, final thoughts?
That was pretty good.
Better
I expect us to be getting back to the economy. I mean, I know this is foreign policy. I'd like to see who it is who negotiated the timing of the debates, because frankly, this is not Governor Romney's strongest issue, but I think he's going to pivot back to the economy, which is a stronger issue for the government.
Okay, folks, this will be a format involving 6 15-minute segments hosted by veteran CBS News correspondent Bob Schieffer. He's very good at what he does. Let's hope that he's very good at it tonight as well. Enjoyed the debate. We'll be back with you all after the debate for question and answer time and comments. Thank you, Pat.
We'll ask you to get your clickers ready. Before we do that, we'll see if Rachel Bevins is here. Rachel had a good tweet. Fixing the economy, isn't there an app for that? Rachel, are you here? Your tweet was chosen. Congratulations. All right, you know the next question. Who won? If you think Barack Obama won, press A. Mitt Romney, press B. 61 of you have voted so far. We'll give you a few moments to find your clickers and to vote. Still about 15 of you who have not voted yet. We'll close this poll in about 5 seconds. And here's the result. 62% think that Mitt Romney won. Let's ask this question again. If the election were held now, please describe how you would vote. And we'll give this one about 5 more seconds. All right, 63% of you right now would vote for Mitt Romney. Let's compare that with what we asked beforehand. The blue reflects before. Think of B and B. The blue graph reflects before. The red graph reflects after the debate. We'll leave this graph up on the screen and turn things over to Alan. Alan?
Okay, panel, I'm glad we all love teachers. That makes me feel good. What happened to our discussion on foreign policy tonight?
You know, we all said that we were going to be gravitating to the economy. And I was looking at my watch. Although they had mentioned the economy a couple of times, it was 32 minutes into the debate, and we had almost left foreign policy behind. Yeah. We went right into the economy. And there's one of the reasons is good. I mean, they talk about the fact that we have strength. The greatest way to show strength abroad is to strengthen our country domestically. So that was at least a logical transition, but it didn't take very long for us to get into that subject.
Anything surprising tonight that you heard?
Well, yeah, I now realize that we have a lot fewer horses and bayonets than we had.
I think that may be the quote of the night.
I think that's going to be the biggest line, and I know a lot of you thought that the governor took the debate tonight. I strongly disagree. I thought the president was very, very strong tonight. I couldn't be more emphatic about that. I think you know, I was here during the first debate, and there was no question in my mind. I saw the president looking down. I saw him looking tired. I saw Romney being really aggressive, taking it to the president, and I agree with you all that night that Romney was the victor. Not tonight. I have to respectfully disagree, and I know that our perceptions are different. The eye contact was there for the president. Did you notice that they were looking at each other? The president wasn't looking down. I thought the president was strong. He was forceful, and he didn't back off. The president tonight probably was more aggressive. In fact, did you hear a couple of times that, and I think this was a debate technique, but I don't think it accomplished anything. The governor actually said, "Look, you can criticize me, but that doesn't do anything as far as our foreign policy agenda." He was being defensive, it seemed like to me, and it's like, you know, don't be coming at me. I think the president was the more aggressive of the two tonight, without being overly aggressive. I thought it was a strong performance.
Well, that's one way to spin it, I guess. I think in terms of debate, tonight Romney needed to be clear and articulate about his vision of foreign policy. He did that, and he was successful. The other thing he had to do was come off as a statesman. And he had to come more to the middle and away from where he's been in the past, which is perhaps some of the foreign policy statements that the president brought up were from the primary battles and whatnot. So he had to come more to the middle. He did that as well. I thought it was terrific when the president would, well, what I clearly think happened tonight is we saw where the president and his team think this election is. And he had to come and he had to be on the attack. He had to be on the defensive on several of his pieces. And Romney, he stayed out of that fray, out of the attack, and let some of this come off. And he's going to come off as a statesman. I don't think anyone clearly won or lost this debate tonight. The first 30 minutes in the part that was really about foreign policy, I think Romney really won. And the piece on the bayonets and horses, I mean, it was a funny line, but it completely ignores the fact what Romney said right before that, which was the horrible position that our military is in. It was a clever way to get off of a serious position that Romney pointed out.
They're already spinning that in Virginia, where we have a big naval presence there, and that's one of the toss-up states going on right now. What about you two?
I think my takeaway from it all was Romney has a vision of America that I want to live in. It's an America full of opportunity without, you know, limitations. And coming out of school, like all of you, I entered into the job market and I had great internships, great experience, and I couldn't find a job in any field for 9 months. So that really resonates with me, because that was my reality. And Romney has the past experience to lead our country economically, and that is what we're facing right now. It is one of our biggest threats. We have to be in control of our money, and it trickles down and it goes throughout the world. And you know, I definitely took that away from it.
Scott?
I thought, well, coming into tonight, Obama had the edge on foreign policy, and Romney needed to maintain. A lot wasn't really expected from him, and I thought, at least in the first 30 minutes, Romney did really, really well for himself. I think towards the end, momentum kind of shifted back towards the president, but I thought it was a very even debate. I think both men did very well, and they did exactly what they needed to do. Obama hammered the things that he needed to hammer in on, and Romney made a strong case for him being a statesman. One line that really stuck out to me is Romney compared the United States to Greece twice, not once but twice, in his closing speech and then during the arguments. And that really resonated with me and stuck out to me, is the spending that's going on in Greece and the economic crisis in Greece, and Romney compared us to Greece. So I don't know if the American people will listen to that, but
did we not see a lot more similarity tonight in foreign policy and big differences in economic policy, but a lot of similarity in foreign policy, right? I mean, they were almost complementing, well, they were complementing each other.
I'll go back to one of the statements I made before this debate started, while we were talking about what to expect for tonight. And I mentioned that there are a lot of occasions when the governor has been very critical of the administration's approach, but then when you try to dig down a little bit and find out really how are they different, we were hard pressed to really figure out how they were different. I think tonight we really saw how similar in many respects they are. You know, the question came up about Egypt. I think both the governor and the president agreed that they wouldn't have supported President Mubarak of Egypt any longer than they did. When they talked about the situation in Iran, both of them agreed that under no circumstances should Iran be allowed to have nuclear capability. They were both in agreement there. There were a couple of other situations that I had where really there weren't any core differences, and so I'm thinking, okay, I'm hearing a lot of argument, I'm hearing a lot of words, I'm hearing a lot of bluster, but not a lot of substance as far as their actual differences.
Same thing.
Yeah, Greg's right on that. I mean, I was kind of surprised that they didn't touch on Benghazi more, actually. I didn't. That really kind of came and left pretty quickly. I thought that maybe they would try to pick at that a little bit. But I think Greg's right. I mean, I think tonight showed us that they, in many ways, are very similar on most of the issues. I'm trying to think of any little stark foreign policy issue they were off on.
You'd be thinking. Any questions from the audience tonight? Please, right over here.
One of the things that I've noticed is both candidates will take the time to elaborate very vaguely on all of their points. And I think one of the things that a college student such as myself, I want to hear the points of which the economy is going to be fixed. And I haven't heard that from either one. I've heard Romney's 5-point plan, but I haven't heard in depth. And with Obama, I haven't heard hardly anything of how he's going to fix the spending deficit that we're in. I'm going to have kids. You guys are going to have kids, grandchildren and such. How are we going to get out of the hole that we've been in since the 70s with having a fiat currency no longer backed by gold and having, China being a currency manipulator? And I just don't think that either one of the candidates has earned my vote, in a sense that we need to have a more efficient economy, basically. So, just thoughts on that.
Can I kind of answer that?
Sure.
Okay. I think that what you should go on is track record. and Romney has a whole resume of bringing businesses up from the ground. So he knows how to work with numbers, and he knows how to look at a budget. He knows where to make cuts, and he knows how to get this economy back on track. So for someone like you and me who are entering into the workforce, that's essential for us. We need something that's going to make sure that there's money there, there's jobs there, and Romney's done that with every business that he's brought up from the ground. So I think that if you look at his track record, that's where you get your answer from.
I think you hit home with a very good point, that you're still concerned, and I think you're one of those vast number of undecided folks who really still don't have an answer. Was the American public served tonight?
No, they were watching baseball and football.
No.
But there's nothing.
No, I'm serious.
Nothing came out of this debate that changed anybody's mind.
Okay.
And to answer this gentleman's question, I mean, unfortunately, I work in a lot of campaigns, right? And I've coached debates like this before. And the modern political system, the modern political communication styles that are out there don't lend itself to what you're asking, the deeper question, the really refined and nuanced points. You just can't do it. It just doesn't lend itself to that. It's unfortunate. There really should be a place for that. But, in some of the detail they got into tonight, particularly that first 30 minutes, most people tuned out. I mean, they kind of heard a few things. They kind of wanted to tune in because it's a water cooler conversation tomorrow. And then, like I said, they tuned in. They went to baseball. They went to something else. That's what I think. I think that most people, they saw the first debate. That was a big build-up. The second debate had some punches. Man, the first 30, 45 minutes of this one was boring.
I share your frustration, though, and I know one thing. When Bob Schieffer was asking Governor Romney about his plan, including the $5 trillion tax cut, plus $2 trillion more for additional military spending, and I thought the president made a good point. That's $2 trillion more in military spending when the Pentagon itself hasn't asked for it. So we're talking about 5 plus 2 trillion, $7 trillion. Bob Schieffer asked a question, how do you do it? How do you actually make that work? And what I heard tonight, and I've never heard an answer to that question yet, and I think I pointed that out in prior debates. Do you remember when Governor Romney invited Bob Schieffer to go on his website to basically show how it works? People have been doing that. People have been going on that website, and the president made that point tonight. And he says, we still can't figure it out. So I share that frustration, and I don't think we got an answer to it tonight.
Good question. Other questions?
I want to say something to what was said earlier about the track record of Romney. And the problem that I have is that he did it in very small areas, in a limited area in which he was very easily could overview the things that he was working with. If he will be the president of the United States, there's so many things that he can't be sure of, he can't be uncertain of, he cannot know that are going on under the surface and within the country, that I don't see him being in control of all these things will make these things work, because there's just so many uncertainties that he will have to deal with that he didn't have to deal with before. So I'm really frustrated just because I hear that 5-point plan over and over again, and it sounds good, and it's 5 points, and it sounds right, but there's no certain way that he says, okay, we're going to do this and this and this. And the other thing that I have a problem with that 5-point plan is it has to pass legislation. So it's not that it's going to be just one act that will be established and will be fine, but all of these little things have to go through legislation. If one of them doesn't pass, the entire plan will just collapse, probably. And that's what has happened before in politics, that we had great plans with great ends, but they've never come to the ends just because so many uncertainties and so many things within the plan just did not pass legislation. So that's the biggest problem that I have with it. It's good as a concept, but I don't see it happening in the way that it's presented tonight.
Okay, I guess that question was to me. I didn't really understand what the question was. I thought it was more of a comment, but I'll answer that.
in the last 4 years, what have you seen from Obama that makes you think that it's going to be? I'll kind of turn that question back on you.
Oh, I'm definitely not saying that Obama will do any better. Like just on the economic side, I just don't see any of the two really will make that big of a difference. I favor Romney just because he's more of a classical liberalism in the old sense that he says we need competition, other than like central planning. But the problem is with that I don't see one of the two really achieving those things over the next 4 years, just because there's, as I said.
See, I think that's part of the overwhelming concern that a lot of these undecideds have, and most of the American public. We have such a crushing debt, but we're not getting any answers that's satisfying enough people. You may disagree with that. I don't know.
I would like to just say really quick, I think there are a lot of uncertainties about both campaigns right now. There are a lot of things that just aren't out there, and I think that's where leadership comes in so important, is we're voting for our leader for the next 4 years. We're voting for the man who's going to bring us out of the debt crisis and lead us. We're voting on a leader, and that's what we're voting for. So we have to use our judgment to choose who's the best leader, and that's not always the easiest thing.
Other questions? One over here.
By the way, you got kudos back there from Dr. Bledsoe. He was the classic liberalism comment. went really far. Political Science 101, yeah.
Wait, the mic.
Just talk loud.
May have to shout it.
So who do you think won in the final address to the nation? Which of those do you think was more powerful addressing all of America?
In the closing comments, you mean? Like in the last little two? They were both very good. They looked in the camera and they said what they had to say. That little final 4 minutes of the debate where each person gets a few closing minutes, that has been so tested and so polled and so refined over the course of the last 6 months that there was nothing new in that whatsoever.
Yeah, I don't know if the summations really made or broke either one of them. I've already expressed my opinion as to the debate as a whole. But one of the things I wanted to point out too is you know, once again in our pre-debate comments, we pointed out what to expect, and we knew that the president was going to hammer on the getting bin Laden, and one of the things that I thought was done effectively by the president is when he pointed out that, and rightfully so, Governor Romney had earlier said that we shouldn't move heaven and earth to get bin Laden, but how important it was, and the way he brought it all together, at least for me, is he said, when we bring those who have harmed us to justice, that sends a message to the world that America is the leader of this world, and that America will do whatever we have to do against those who have harmed us. And that sends a powerful message. I think that was a big point in this debate that really impacted on me.
Sir, you had a question right here.
Several times during the debate, Romney was talking about the dire state of our Navy and military, when we spend more than most the next 10 countries combined on military. Like, we have something like 12 nuclear aircraft carriers when China has 1 that they bought from Ukraine. So I just kind of want to know, what is the dire state of our military that we have to spend like $2 trillion more on our military?
Good question.
Is that posturing, or does he really believe that? I'm being sincere.
Does Romney really believe that
spending that much more money?
I'm not a military expert, so I'm
I know,
not
but
advanced to answer the question exactly. But they are constantly. I mean, obviously, the military is constantly looking and evaluating what needs to be done, and what they're trying to do is spend more money on more modern technologies, more drone programs, more things of that nature. So these are very expensive programs. But in reference to the Navy, I honestly could not even begin to tell you. The Governor Romney presented a couple statistics about where the Navy is today versus, 20 years ago, 50 years ago, whatever. I'll take him at his word. I mean, I don't know what the Navy commanders say that they really need or don't need. But if we're going to exercise this peace through force argument, then we got to continue military spending. And part of that military spending, in my opinion, would be, increasing soldiers' salaries, taking care of them and doing a little bit more for them, and making sure that we continue to have a high caliber soldier, just as we do a high caliber program for technology and defenses and things of that nature. That's the only thing I could say to that. I just don't really know the specifics of the naval argument, and does it cost $2 billion to upgrade the Navy? I just don't know that.
Part of that, if I can just chime in for just a moment, we're at a different point in this election where the Democratic candidate has actually been perceived, and this is borne out by polling. The Democratic candidate has actually been perceived as stronger in foreign policy and security issues. And that doesn't happen very much. George McGovern just passed away, and I remember in 1972, the polls at that time, when we were nearing the end of the Vietnam War, overwhelmingly favored the Republican candidate, Richard Nixon, for strength on foreign policy issues and security issues domestically. But in this election, the president is the stronger of the two. And I think that $2 trillion in additional spending, without a great analysis of what it is exactly we're going to be spending it on or why it is that we need it, I think it's to try, I think it's Governor Romney's attempt to try to counterbalance that perceived strength that the president has in this particular election on security issues.
I think Greg's right. I mean, I think that I think this is the first time in many years that Democrats have actually been able to talk about. They did at the convention. They conveyed a lot of foreign policy stuff at their convention. It's been the first time in a long time they've been able to do that.
Question.
So a flip-flop, really a flip-flop.
It really is.
Okay.
Okay, I'm just wondering, I keep hearing that Mitt Romney's plan is vague, and it just keeps, and that Paul Ryan's budget is bad and messed up, and the voucher system isn't going to work and stuff like that. Where's Obama's plan? Where's Obama's budget? It got beat down 97-0. I don't understand where his plan is. Where are the specifics on Obama's plan? And if one of you could tell me that, I'm just really confused.
I think we are too.
Join the club.
I'm going to defer to someone else. I've got a comment, but I'll defer here.
No, I think this isn't to you though.
One of the things I thought we would have heard that a little bit more during this debate, because if you listen to the Sunday talk programs, that really was the message that we heard on Meet the Press and This Week with George Stephanopoulos. I didn't have a chance to listen to CBS, but that's exactly it. Where's the plan? And I guess my response would be, that's why the president has been really harping on the fact that when he took office, we were losing over 800,000 jobs a month. I mean, the recession had already started in the months preceding his election. And when he was inaugurated in January of 2009, we were losing that number of jobs, 800,000 jobs. But now we've had 32 months in a row where that hemorrhaging has stopped, and actually the jobs have increased. And that addresses a lot of the things that we've talked about here today. And then the unemployment rate now dipped below 8% for the first time during the time. So I think the president's message is that, first of all, the stimulus program is working. It just took time to get to this point. The automotive industry is back. People are hiring again. And so he's basically saying, these things that we've put in place, and even more so if Congress had been able to pass a jobs bill, because that wasn't even passed, even these things will work if we give them time. And that's his pitch to being reelected. We're on the right path now, and he says, let's not go back to the policies that got us to the position where we're hemorrhaging those 800,000 number of jobs a month. Let's not go back to those failed policies in the past. I think that's his message.
Final comments from everybody? Let's start here.
I voted today. Get out and vote.
Good.
Yeah, absolutely vote.
Go vote.
I'll make it unanimous.
Thank you very much, audience. Great questions tonight. Thank you, panel.
And if you will, join me not only in thanking the panel, but in thanking, if you like Pizza and Politics, thank our provost, Craig Bledsoe, back here for his support of it. And if you liked the last 4 debate watches, thank Lydia Linker, Leah Davis, and Bethany Crouch, who made it all happen. And go vote.